Hey there folks, welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture. And today we're going to be talking about the newest album from Joyce Manor, titled Never Hungover Again. Yeah, right. Okay, so here's the problem being a video reviewer that covers punk records in any capacity. If you're not careful, you might find yourself ending up taking longer in your review than the album itself. So much of punk, especially hardcore punk, worked best by distilling its formula down to a razor-sharp, precisely timed slice of music, which can operate as something of a double-edged sword. I mean, if you do it right, you can create something with blisteringly sharp, potent impact unlike anything else on the market. But if you don't hit that right spot at precisely the right time, your album can come across as a bit of ephemeral and lacking in that real impact. So enter Joyce Manor, a California-based punk act that crashed onto the indie scene with their self-titled record in 2011 and followed it up with Of All Things I Will Soon Grow Tired in 2012. Both of which are records I tend to think are pretty damn solid across the board for the 10 to 15 minutes of which you get them. Initially, I was pretty impressed by the songwriting. It bites hard from the broadly sketched metaphors of teenage angst, but it was nuanced, and then again Green Day operated on the same template. But really did hook me was the more experimental side of that second album. Experimenting with dirty, lo-fi sounds, more reminiscent of Beck than anything else, balanced against the decidedly poppier songs, all brought together by Barry Johnson's honestly cynical, too smart for the room delivery. The contrast immediately drew some comparisons with the Smiths, because music critics like to make hyperbolic comparisons way too quickly when they spot obvious talent. And you know what? They were the only ones spotting talent, as Joyce Manor signed to Epitaph Records for their newest record, Never Hungover Again. Yeah, okay. And which is their longest album at 10 songs and just under 20 minutes. So I checked it out. What'd I get? Honestly, not as much as of which I was hoping. I'm not saying that Never Hungover Again by Joyce Manor is bad. There's a lot to like about this album, especially if you like pop punk that's a little bit on the heavier side. But you know what? I'd hesitate to call it as interesting as their last release, and there are fewer moments that really stood out for me, lyrically and instrumentally. So okay, how the hell did that happen? Well, let's consider Joyce Manor instrumentally for a second, where there's more of a shift towards a poppier sound in terms of slowing down the riffs a bit and gunning for those more melodic hooks a little bit more directly. But when you think about it, the production and instrumentation really isn't that far removed from their typical wheelhouse. Fast-paced, slightly gritty melodic riffs, strong bass lines, solid drum progressions, with only a few richer keyboard sections to show the slightest hint of pop modernization at all. Honestly, the bass work by Matt Ebert is probably the strongest element of the record for me instrumentally in keeping that punk tone, when the band does opt to choose to experiment a little bit more, which isn't as often as I'd like. Mostly on the catchy as hell guitar line on Schlee, the syncopated guitar work on In the Army Now, or the bass on its own on the Falling in Love Again and Heart Tattoo. Now, I'm not gonna lie and say that the lack of lo-fi songs and broader instrumentation, that it didn't irk me a little bit. But you know what? I get Joyce Manor's choice to go with a more streamlined pop-punk approach while keeping with their characteristic brevity. Hell, Barry Johnson's voice, it's a natural fit for it, with a voice that's excessively raw and yet can handle a lot of the teenage angst that underscores a lot of this record without becoming melodramatic. I'm not sure he's always the best positioned within the mix. Placement towards a little bit more to the front could have given Joyce Manor a bit more of that crossover appeal, of which they're very clearly looking. But you know what? He's fine in front of the mic. I don't really have any complaints there. So okay, what about those lyrics and themes where Joyce Manor tends to nail the line between punk angst and more oblique indie rock, the stuff that brought me to the band in the first place? Well, they're pretty good and reasonably well realized if you've got a taste for decidedly teenage sensibilities when it comes to the drama on display, most of it framed as Johnson's hapless loser getting taken advantage of when he's looking for sex or a relationship. And I'll be honest, there's a few pretty decent variations on this theme. Christmas Card focus on the helpless anger and self-doubt he feels when getting a card from an ex he doesn't know how to feel about it. Falling in Love Again shows him trying to navigate some awkward territory with that ex and find some of his feelings returning. And in the Summer is the typical song about summer flings fizzling out. The Jerk takes the perspective of the complicated case where the guy pretends to be an asshole and wins the girl's affection, and now he's got no idea how to deal with her because he wasn't honest in the first place. And then you have Heated Swimming Pool sees our protagonist attempt to assert control, ultimately somewhat in futility because he lets the girl slip back into his life anyway. Now, there's some solid nuance here in the songwriting, and the songs are well framed to reflect some very human situations, with the upbeat tone only underscoring the melancholy in the lyrics. It's a good contrast there. Probably the foundation of a lot of those Smiths comparisons, so I can buy it there, I guess. But at the same time, the lyrics do feel a little bit benign and recycled at points, and could have striven to be a little bit more ambitious in their metaphors. The worst case being the bad tattoo, pathetic love of tattoo heart. I've just heard that before way too many times. And what's both good and, if I'm gonna be honest, a little bit exasperating, is that there are two songs that do push the metaphors a little bit farther. Schlee and that awkward attempt at tenderness in that song, and the loneliness in The Army Now, which loosely sketches a story of just being left behind. In fact, if we're going to extract a theme from this collection of short stories, which is really what it is, it falls into the, well, the relationship might suck and be painful, and it might lead to heartbreak in the end, but it's sure as hell better than being alone or abandoned. And yeah, okay, it's a juvenile sentiment, but you know what? The album does fit that tone, and I can't deny that for its blisteringly short runtime, it's a sentiment that kind of works, I guess. So in the end, you know, I mostly like this. I'm not sure if it's a pop punk record that'll really stick with me or last beyond a few summer listens, especially with its brevity, but it does have some punch, and there's some material here that does have some depth that I liked. I won't say that it's better than Of All Things I Will Soon Grow Tired, but Never Hungover Again, it's a close second. I feel comfortable. I'm gonna be generous here and give it a 7 out of 10 and a recommendation. Maybe just wore me down, but the album is perfectly represented by the futility masked behind its title. As much as we might pledge to never be hungover again, eventually life sucks us back in. So you know what? Give the album a listen. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. If you'd like to like and subscribe, and be more than grateful. If there's anything else I might be able to do to improve my presentation, or any albums that came out this year or are coming out this year that you want me to take a look at, I'd be more than happy to give them a listen. Until then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.